Thank you so much for coming along tonight to Mynewsnight. And tonight, as you are well aware, the theme is influencer relations. Under the influence, my title, we're now all in the influence game. Now, I've been doing a little bit of reading. I don't know if any of you have read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's kind of a classic. Has anyone heard of this book? Hands up if you've heard of it. Hands up if you've read it. Hands up if you've read part of it. Yeah, it's a great book. It was written in the 1930s by Dale Carnegie. I love that original front cover. And I guess you could say that this is kind of the viral success of the 1930s. It soon caught on. I don't think he had big expectations for this book, but today it's still a massive bestseller. My degree was in psychology. I don't think this is exactly pop psychology, but it's kind of, you could almost classify it in that kind of genre. But I think he's got some very wise words to get tonight off onto the right footing. Whether you're in marketing or PR, nowadays we are all in this influencer game. This particular quote I liked: when dealing with people, let us remember we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We're dealing with creatures of emotion. Creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. So just think about that. When you're trying to get someone to do something, they're motivated by basic human needs, by emotion, by what their prejudices are. Marketing is sometimes referred to as a direct form of influence. Whether it is Monty the Penguin I absolutely love this new advert from John Lewis. Anyone like this advert? Anyone hate this advert? Yeah, there's a couple. But it's a form of, I think it appeals to that emotional side, right? It's actually, maybe I'm a complete sap, but I find it actually quite moving. And it actually influences you directly through emotion. There's no kind of real explanation of what John Lewis does, or why it's a great store, or what the products are. It hits you right on a pure emotional level. And that's what we might do in marketing, speak directly to the consumer. But I guess if this is maybe an oversimplification, but in PR, it's a little bit more about influencing the influencers. And this is what we're going to be getting into this evening, is this idea that you need to know who your influencers are, and you need to be able to influence them so that they can ultimately exert some kind of influence on the end target market and audience. Another quote from this book that I liked: there is only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything. Did you ever stop to think of that? Yes, just one way. And that is by making the other person want to do it. Remember, there is no other way. So don't kid yourself. You can't influence someone if they don't want to be influenced. And this will go for the intermediary influencers, whoever they may be. They have to want to do what you would like them to do. Then this one I particularly liked. I'm starting near the top. There's one longing, almost as deep, almost as imperious as the desire for food or sleep, which is seldom gratified. It is what Freud calls the desire to be great. It is what Dewey calls the desire to be important. Lincoln once began a letter by saying, "Everyone likes a compliment." William James said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." He didn't speak, mind you, of the wish or the desire or the longing to be appreciated. He said, the craving. Understand what makes people tick. They've got to want to do what you'd like them to do. And the key thing here is this desire to be important. If you tell me how you get your feeling of importance, I'll tell you what you are. Everyone's different in terms of what makes them have that feeling of importance. If you can appeal to that feeling of importance, you have a chance of influencing that person. That determines your character. So this basic human need, this feeling of importance, is a good starting point for us when we think about how we're going to manage influencer relations. So when we think about in PR and comms, the kind of people that we're looking to influence, how could they potentially get their feeling of importance? We think about journalists, we think about bloggers, we think about thought leaders, opinion formers, politicians, all these types of influencers we might want to reach. One thing might be this person's feeling of importance comes from being the first. This idea of exclusive to a journalist, perhaps, or an early look at a story. Exclusivity in terms of it needs to be just their knowledge. and extra special access perhaps you can offer these influencers. These things will make them feel special if this is what matters to them, if this is how they define their importance. Some people are motivated by opportunities to network and to hobnob with rich and famous or the people who are leaders in their area. If that's what's important to them, then that's going to be your key and your way in. Some people simply like to be treated, and that might make them feel important. Sometimes people want their profile to be built. All of these could be keys and ways in. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of this so-called Franklin effect, the Benjamin Franklin effect. So Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers, father of America. Here's a little story about him. When he was trying to win the favor of a rival legislator in America, this person didn't like him at all, but he found that he asked him if he could borrow a book. Simple act, can I borrow this book? This person who didn't really like him lent him the book, and from that day on, after Benjamin Franklin thanked him a lot and returned the book to him and said, thank you so much for this, and I had a good time reading this book, he said that this legislator was then always his friend and civil to him and polite. And this is an effect known as the Benjamin Franklin effect, that we kind of post-rationalize afterwards. If I've done something for you, I think you must be my friend because I did that thing for you, so I wouldn't have done that thing for you if I wasn't your friend. And you start with something like that and you can move on to something maybe more ambitious than just lending a book, something more valuable to you. So I think that if we start with a small step in influencer relations, it can lead to big things. This was a little example, a funny example that just happened last week to us at Mynewsdesk. We view Charles Arthur, the just recently former editor, who's been there for The Guardian for 7 years, the technology editor at The Guardian, as quite a key influencer for us, potentially. Major influential journalist in the technology sector. And we asked him, I actually personally asked him on Twitter, whether he would like to do a little interview with us about some of the things he's said to do with best practice in PR. A small thing, really, a small step. And he took that step and he did the interview for us, and we videoed him. And he was very, very gracious about that. Then, the next thing was, a few weeks later, we produced this little promo video, Mynewsdesk, and we got this tweet. I hardly ever link to videos or to promo videos, but this by Mynewsdesk is great. Stay to the end. The key to this is the sort of thing that we would want an influential journalist with a large following to be tweeting out our latest promo video. Could we ever ask for that directly? I don't think we could. It might get our relationship off to a very bad footing, but this is something where I believe it's a small example of the Benjamin Franklin effect, that he had liked his interaction with us. He'd done us a favor, in fact, in the interview in the first place. He felt well disposed to us, and hopefully I believe that he liked the ad as well, which I'll quickly show you if you like. You might be curious.
I'm sure it used to be easier. 20 years ago, communications and marketing was pretty much just schmoozing journos to get column inches in print.
Nowadays, if you're not sharing your reply to the guy who tweeted about that comment made on Tumblr 2 seconds ago, you're not doing your job properly.
Which one?
Not yet. In order to be the always-on, headline-making, influencer-engaging machine the world and my boss demand, I rely on Mynewsdesk.
Our speed dating event needs a tagline.
Don't die alone. Mynewsdesk allows me to understand my audience, work out who's most influential, and instantly deliver news and content directly to them.
Focus group want the whole page to be a little bit more classy.
Use caps, Times New Roman font, and increase the spacing between the letters. With an all-in-one online newsroom, we can control the content and the app, which my IT director loves.
The CEO has confused the corporate Twitter account with his text messages. Again. He's written, I've locked the door, got some bourbon, and I'm ready for your pictures. ...
Tweet this. So send us a pic of your ideal tea party to win a lifetime supply of bourbon biscuits. # photo competition. Use Mynewsdesk to promote the competition. It basically removes all barriers to publishing, distributing, and measuring our online content. I am in complete control. which in this job is a must.
Now,
We know what it's like being a marketing and communications professional, so we built Mynewsdesk for you. Start your free trial or request a demo today.
Company we used, give a shout out to Cat Snake, nice production company. And I'm actually going to big up a piece that has got significantly more views than that piece I just showed you, which is something they did for the Compassion in World Farming organization. Definitely recommend checking this one out if you haven't, because 6,575,000 views, gone mega viral. The key thing here, apart from it being an excellent video, is that actually Aaron Paul of Breaking Bad was one of the early ones to share this on social media, and the Upworthy site as well. How many of you are familiar with Upworthy? So this is a site that it's a little bit like BuzzFeed, but it focuses on feel-good stories, and it's one of the sort of new generation of media sites. So being picked up by Upworthy and then sort of shared on social by Aaron Paul to turn that to a whole different level of virality for that one. So it's key as well to make sure that you have the right influencers picking up on stuff that you put out. It's got to be great content initially, but you also have to think about who's going to help take it to the next level. Now this is one, if I felt a bit boastful on the Charles Arthur one, I'm going to show the other side of it. So I was speculatively trying to get various influencers to tweet out our influencer relations survey that I'm going to show you a few results in a minute. Hi Jeremy Waite, major social media influencer. Mynewsdesk running a survey on influencer relations, any chance of a retweet? Is it just me, or is it slightly ironic that an influencer relations survey needs to ask for a retweet? And I was like, well, fair play, mate. I can't say much to that. You're absolutely dead right. But the mistake that I'd made is that I don't really know Jeremy personally, and we haven't really had that Benjamin Franklin moment. He hasn't really ever done anything for me before, so therefore this was a bit much, really. And actually, although most of the people who I contacted did share the survey, Jeremy didn't. And there's nothing really that that I felt a bit embarrassed by that, because that's going too fast and being too sort of presuming too much, really. But I'll work on him. Keep going. 437 communications professionals did complete our survey, which is great. Hopefully quite a lot of you guys might have done so. The breakdown was PR comms 43%, we've got marketing 26%, and then digital marketing, content marketing, social media, branding, internal comms. A lot of people, of course, do a combination of those. But that's quite a nice kind of spread of the Mynewsdesk kind of audience generally, but definitely a PR comms kind of focus. And here are some of the results. You're the first guys to see any of the results, actually, so we're going to share the full report very shortly with you all. So how do you identify your target influencers? The top one is actually web search, 46%, social media monitoring, 43%, media database, 41%, media monitoring, 40%, journal request service, 31%, LinkedIn search, 31%, and then there's quite a lot of other ones as well, which you'll see in the full report. Interesting to sort of think about, that there's not really something there that people are relying on yet that is particularly sophisticated and particularly up to the job. How do you first approach the influencers? So 72% do it via email. I think what's interesting is that the second highest is what I showed you a couple of examples of, approaching influencers via social media directly. That's now overtaken the telephone. And then the face-to-face ones, work events, obviously websites slightly different, and then social meetings are lower. And this is now, we live in a world where we can't really know all of our influencers that we're dealing with. Do you pay your influencers? Definitely a controversial topic, and probably needs a bit of digging into to find out what people exactly are paying them to do. But never, 64%, sometimes 35%, very few, 1% always. Is influencer engagement a metric that you report on? This is one that's disappointing at the moment. Most people, 73%, are not reporting on this. Now it's difficult, I know that, but we need to start doing it, because if anything's worth doing, you need to be measuring the success of it. And this stat was interesting, that more than half, most comms pros know less than 10% of their influencers personally. So this is the situation we're in. We want to influence a lot of people, but we're not really going to get to know them personally. So it needs some different techniques, right, which I think we're going to explore with the following presentations. Which metrics are useful measures of influence? This is one that really gets people debating. What is actually a useful measure of influence? So 63% are saying that the reach of the publication that person writes for, of course a lot of influencers don't necessarily write, but where they do write for a publication, that reach is the top answer. Number of followers on social media is still a valid metric for most people. 52%, just over half, saying number of shares and retweets their content gets, number of readers of their blog, and then the 38% search ranking for key topics. Bit surprising, really, because I think that so much is driven by search, but the minority are saying that is a key measure or a useful measure of influence. And then the free influencer ranking tools. So there are a lot of tools out there. Maybe people feel they're not quite up to the job at the moment, but just a little over a quarter is saying that's a useful measure. We also asked them who they'd most like to influence, and this guy was the top answer. Barack Obama was also up there. Oprah Winfrey was up there. So I'm not quite sure why, but there's so much about Richard Branson that is interesting from a PR comms perspective, and not least at the moment where the terrible accident happened with the spaceship just last week. And that's a very interesting PR comms case study, right? Because a lot of people are giving Richard Branson a lot of praise for the way he's handled it. He tends to handle these things very well. One thing that's particularly relevant to our discussion tonight about what Richard Branson did is he very quickly was able to kind of mobilize the people who've bought the tickets to go on the space cruise or the space journey, the first space voyage, and get them to speak to the media and say, that they're still going to do it, and that, this is important, and, it's not sort of the end of the whole thing. And having that ready, I think, is key. I no doubt that he would have had this stuff ready to go for such an eventuality, as we just talked about. So, bit of summing up from what I've said. So, first of all, as in the Richard Branson example, before you have some kind of crisis, make sure that you do know who your influencers are that are going to be particularly persuasive, who you can call on in that situation. It's not something that you want to just start doing as in a reactive way. In general, in influencer relations, I believe you should start with small favors and build up to the bigger asks. Understand that feeling of importance, because it won't be the same thing for every journalist, every blogger, every influencer. Understand what makes them tick, what makes them feel special and important, and then that's kind of your way in, and that should be your strategy. Generally, with influencer relations, I think we need to move beyond this sort of crazy spreadsheets and lots of different tick boxes and things like that, and actually get organized, apply some kind of CRM approach to this, and actually know closely what all your influencers are doing. There needs to be some kind of monitoring platform in there to make sure that you can keep track of when your influencers do something that you need to respond to. It's an opportunity. Generally, it's a long play, this. It's a long-term game. Be patient, not pushy. Don't do what I did with someone like Jeremy. Use your team. I think this is the thing as well. It might be given as a responsibility to one or two people in the business. That's not really right. You can use your whole organization. If you let them in on your strategy, everyone can play a part in building that relationship, and then those influencers will have a different perception of your brand and your company. And finally, keep score, because it's no good. You won't remember what happened in your last campaign. You've got to keep track of what people have done for you in the past. That's my little summary, so hopefully that's useful.